Today, we're looking at Robert Oster's Charcoal. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Robert Oster's Charcoal, you would think should be a gray or black ink, but it's really a purpley heavy gray. It's like a purple gray. It's a neat color. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Lamy Al-Star with a 1.1 stub to take my notes for this video. But before we get to the writing samples, let's take a look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. And we see that it immediately flees its way up the page. We start to see those purples come out at the bottom of where the ink is being left behind. And we see some very, very dark blues at the top. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into the water. Now we see the same thing. It flees up the page. We get those purples. They're a bit darker this time. The blues at the top are quite a bit darker. And when the purples and blues come together in both chromatographies, that's where we're seeing some of the darker tones that lean towards a black. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to hold up on paper, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, the second H definitely started to bloom out. I think we got fairly lucky with some of the writing. I would not use this ink in a highlighting situation because I suspect it will not highlight well. And water sort of supports that. When I put the drop of water down, we see that it completely reactivates and pulls almost all of that ink off the page, saying only water should be needed to clean this from your pen. But we test the pen flush anyway, which does the same thing that water did. It completely is pulling it off the page, and the only thing left behind is what really gets sort of smeared. Bleach totally removes it, but there's no reason to use bleach. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being 2.1 to 2.9. Robert Oster's Charcoal has a viscosity of 2.71, which puts it right in the realm of normal. To get my dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the extra fine and medium nib. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being 13 to 21 seconds. And Robert Oster's Charcoal has a dry time of 12 seconds, making it a faster drying ink. Now, let's look at the writing sample. So I got this ink in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I used a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. These spots aren't really bleed. That's me being sloppy, and the paper underneath wasn't as dry, but otherwise we have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, tons of me being messy here. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, and it's very light. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry, and it really looks kind of like a dark blue than a black here. Medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby in both shows us we're not going to get any color variation. The smear test says we're likely going to be able to recover this. The Tomoe River, other than in the scrubby where I put it on stupid thick, we have no bleed, we have ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread. It does have haloing almost all the way through, which is really nice with the 1.1. The extra fine gives us, it has no shade. It has the haloing, it has no shade. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 12 seconds to dry. Medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 18 seconds to dry. The extra fine and the medium scrubby show us that we're not going to get any color variation, and the smear said, no, you don't get to recover it. write on something other than Tomoe River. The Rhodia paper. Rhodia gives us, just looking, these aren't bleed spots. That's transfer. They don't line up with the writing on the other side. So we have no bleeding. We have no ghosting. The 1.1 gives us no feather, no spread. Little bits of that halo, not so much of the halo, but little bits of it. It's coming through, but not tons. The extra fine, and no shading. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. It does give us some shading, but it's going from a dark medium tone to a very dark tone. So we see that medium dark tone and dark tone in Lazy, where it's very dark on the LA and then it gets a little lighter into the ZY. The Dog, we get some of that where it's that medium dark to very dark. The same on the 8. So we do get a little bit of it in the extra fine, not a ton of color variation. 8 seconds to dry. Medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 12 seconds to dry. The Scrubby and the extra fine shows us some color variation. The same little bits of color variation that we get in the writing sample. The medium shows us that we're not going to get any color variation in this ink. And the smear tests for both say you could likely recover this if you did smear it as you were writing. So I tested this on black and red paper. The black and red paper gave us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gave no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Just how it is. The extra fine gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. Little bits of shading that goes on. Again, that like medium dark to dark tone occurs in this quite a bit. We get with the brown, we get it in quick, we have it in jumps, we have it in over. It's just that it's a dark medium, to a dark. So it's a little change. But it's a little change that's fairly consistent throughout. So if you're used to seeing the shading, it's nice. I think it brings a nice character to the color. It's not stand out, but it is nice. 8 seconds to dry. Still looking very bluish as a charcoal color. Medium. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. We lost the shade with this. 11 seconds to dry. The Scrubby and the extra fine shows us that we're going to get some of that color variation. You have to look far left to far right, and you can see it. We got that same color variation in the writing. The medium shows us no color variation, and we got no color variation in the writing. The smear test says we could likely recover this if we smeared it while writing. So I tested Limon paper. We got bleeding. We didn't touch the page underneath, but we did get bleeding all over. This would be a problem for me with this notebook at this size. If it was a pocket size, probably wouldn't. And it's a thick, hear that? That's a thick paper for this to bleed through. The 1.1 has definite spread, definite feathering. No halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine has definite spread, definite feathering all over it. No halo, no sheen, no shade. 6 seconds to dry. The medium has definite spread, definite feathering, tons of feathering. It's a flock of birds. It's bad. No halo, no sheen, no shade. 10 seconds to dry. The Scrubby shows us that we don't get any color variation with this ink whatsoever. The smear test does say if you smeared it while you were writing, you would probably be able to recover it without too much difficulty. I just wouldn't want to write in this notebook with this ink if it was anything I ever wanted to read again. So that's all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Robert Oster's Charcoal, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I chose Elixir's Tangerine because it's a great orange ink. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Robert Oster's Charcoal? In most of the writing that I've done, it has much more of a blue than a black look. And that blue look is really confusing since it's called charcoal. I tend to think of charcoal as being very black because of when you use it in art. I can even see it in the spectrum of grays, but this much blue and purple is confusing to me as a color. I would not lean towards this ink because it just feels misnamed. That aside, the color is very nice to look at. This is a very good ink, and I think it could get you by even in a work environment. Thanks for watching.